Okay.
So here we are recovering again the thread that we lost because my computer went off. So please, Ken, whenever you want to, you say you remember where you were and you were talking about. We were
Right.
in talking about the integral theory changing through the years and how
Right.
it has evolved.
Right. Um, okay. I'm not showing up on the wording, right?
Correct.
You
Okay.
were doing the number five. You were answering the number five, which was that in relation to the above that we were talking before about the integral theory that has
Right.
always reality as evolutionary process and all that, and where is humanity right now? And then the fifth question was how in relation to the above is your view of how integral theory maps about real world evolution changed
Right.
over the years. Yeah.
Right. And I was explaining how I had added new types of wholeness. And I explained waking up, which is a union of infinite with finite, growing up, which is a type of wholeness because each higher stage of growth transcends but includes the previous stage. So they get bigger and bigger and bigger. And I pointed out that if you actually track any stream of holons in any quadrant, and you can actually see the holons getting bigger. So you go from protons and neutrons and electrons to atoms, from atoms to molecules, from molecules to single celled organisms, from single celled organisms to multicellular organism, and then up an entire tree of life. And if at any of those points, if you take like a molecule and look at it under an electron microscope, you can actually see, visibly see within the molecule all of the atoms that are making up the molecule. You can actually see those atoms. And if you look at the atoms, you can actually see the protons, neutrons, and electrons making up those atoms. So these aren't just some airy fairy hypothetical deductions, they're real realities. And the universe is made of these holons. Um, and so what I did is look at the various types of holons that we have, and I came up with 5 different types of wholeness that occurs as you add up different types of holons. So if you add infinite and finite holons, you get waking up. And when you have a waking up experience, you become one with everything because you're one with the infinite ground of all being. And then growing up is a series of stages of finite things, but each stage transcends and includes its predecessor. So each stage gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And that is true for as high as you go up the growing up scale. And then um, cleaning up is generally associated with the name of Sigmund Freud and his inner circle. And his inner circle, because Freud was a very bright guy and his readings attracted very bright people. So the so called inner circle, those um, psychologists who came on board to work with Freud and gathered around him were because he was attracted in intelligent people. All of his inner circle, and you've heard most of their names. Their inner circle included Carl Jung, who Freud had already announced as, quote, my crown, prince, and successor. Carl Jung, Alfred Adler, Otto Rank, And Otto Rank was a brilliant genius. He invented the terms neurosis, psychosis, birth trauma, power drives. I mean, he was just an amazing thinker, as all of Freud's inner circle was. Alfred Adler. And by the way, Alfred Adler, although not many people really know much about him, when tests have been given to all psychotherapists in America, and they're simply a list of questions. Do you believe XYZ? Do you believe XYZ? Do you believe XYZ? And the vast majority of people taking that test believed mostly Adlerian ideas. So even though they were really not that familiar with Adler, most psychotherapists in this country are Adlerians, whether they know it or not. So those are the type of smart people that Freud surrounded himself with. And Freud was asked, what does this new psychoanalysis of yours do? And I'm going to explain why I counted this as a form of wholeness. And what he said was, where id was, their ego shall be.
Yeah, you told us this in the last interview.
Right, right.
Because it's important.
And
Yeah.
just to quickly summarize that, what most people know the terms id, libido, ego from Freud because he introduced them. But it wasn't, Freud really didn't introduce those terms because he himself never once used any of those terms. He never once used the term id, never once used the term ego. Those terms were put into Freud's work by his official translator, James Strachey, because they were all Latin terms.
Yeah.
And Strachey felt that the Latin terms made Freud sound more scientific.
More scientific, yeah.
So he just went through and took all of the terms that Freud really used and used their Latin equivalents. So what terms did Freud really use? Well, we talked about first person I, second person you, third person he, she, they, them, it, or its. Freud used those actual terms. So when he, as James Strachey translated it as, where id was, their ego shall be. What Freud actually said was, where it is, their I shall become. And that's what he wrote. That's how he wrote it out. There's only one of Freud's books that are translated correctly using the terms Freud really used, and it's called The Problem of Lay Analyses. And in it, he uses the I and the it and you and I, me, mine, and so on. And I recommend you read it because what he really said when they asked him, what does the psychoanalysis of yours do? Was what he said was, where it is, there I shall become. And that's really a brilliant summary of what psychoanalysis did. And to see how that works, you can look at another one of Freud's major followers, Fritz Perls, and you can see how Pearls used where it was there I shall become as the basis of his therapy. He was a superstar at Esalen Institute. Esalen is the growth center in America. It was the first growth center, and it was so popular that by the end of the first year in existence, there were 300 growth centers in America, all modeled on Esalen, which of course was founded by our good friend Mike Murphy. And so Pearls would hundreds of people would come to all of his workshops. He was just massively famous. And he was famous in part because of he was really a very egocentric guy. He said, for example, I can cure any neurosis in 15 minutes.
Yeah, you told us this also in last interview because
Right.
he could do it. It's
He
true.
could do that. And
He could
that
do it.
even his critics acknowledged that he actually he can. And so
Right.
he would get up, sit in front of the room and say, okay, who wants to work? And people would raise their hands and he'd call somebody up and he'd put a chair down here and he'd say, okay, sit in this chair. They'd sit in the chair and he'd say, okay, what's your problem? And the person would say, maybe, well, I've got this anxiety, it's killing me. And he'd say, okay, I want you to and he put another empty chair in front of the chair that the person was sitting in. So the person's sitting in a chair and there's an empty chair facing him. And so Pearls would say, okay, put the anxiety in that empty chair and talk to it. And the person would go, what do you mean, talk to it? And you say, well, say, why are you doing this to me? Why are you making me so nervous? And Freud had noticed that as soon as somebody pushes something out of their mind into the unconscious, they start referring to it as a third person, as an it. Um, so they'll say, the obsession, it overcomes me, or the anxiety, I can't control it, or the compulsion, it just takes me over. I can't do anything about it. And so when Freud said where it was there I shall become, he was actually talking about a way to make the mind whole and healthy again, because you would split it off into an I versus an it, and you referred to the it as an it, and you projected it onto somebody else. So Pearls would say, talk to this it. Um, and they go like, what? And they say, well, why are you doing this to me? And why are you making me feel so nervous? Or just like that. Just talk with it like it's a person. Sit in the empty chair, be the anxiety, and talk as if you're the anxiety. So the person would sit in the chair and they would come up with, okay, why am I doing this to you? Because you're stupid. You always screw things up. You always make a mess of everything. So of course I'm picking on you. Who wouldn't? Something like that. And say, okay, now sit in your chair as yourself and answer it. And just have a conversation. Talk with it as if it's a real person. So they go back and forth, talking as the I, and then he'd talk as the it. But notice whenever he talked as the it, he would talk as if he were an I. So it's like, why are you doing this to me, anxiety? And then he'd sit in the empty chair and play the anxiety and he'd say, I'm doing this to you because you're an idiot. You always mess things up and I don't like you. So, of course, I'm going to make you feel nervous. And he'd go back and forth, playing the I and then speaking from the it as if it were an I. What he was doing, of course, and the audience could see within 10 to 15 minutes, this person's anxiety was going down because what he was doing is where it was, there I shall become. And that's what the person was doing. They were playing the it, but as if it were part of their I. So that would reintegrate and give it a mind a wholeness where previously it just had a brokenness into an I versus a split off it. Um, so cleaning up, and I call it cleaning up because most of the friends that I knew who were seeing psychiatrists or therapists would say, oh, I'm a mess. I really got a lot of cleaning up to do. So I just call this cleaning up because that's what a lot of my friends called it. And that was another type of wholeness, making a whole and healthy psyche. So I called that cleaning up and added it to my list of wholenesses. And then for showing up, this was including all four quadrants and how you think. And remember, Jane Lovinger actually found that her quadrants, I mean, her stages of development, of which there were 7 or 8, each of them added a new perspective. So stage 1 could take a first person perspective, but that was it. Stage 2 could take a second person perspective, and it could understand that you have a different view of the world than I do, because I can understand that you have a second person perspective. And then third stage, you can take a third person perspective. You can understand that they have a different view than you do, and you have a different view than I do. And so what's a fourth person perspective? If you're thinking about first, second, and third person perspective, and you're thinking about them all together, you're doing that from a fourth person perspective. So that's an important addition. And when you get to a fifth stage, you can take a fifth person perspective. Sixth stage, you can take a sixth person perspective. Seventh stage, you can take a seventh person perspective. And her eighth and final stage, you can take an eighth person perspective. So that's quite a few number of different perspectives, but they're all available the higher you go in development, because your capacity for perspectives continues to expand, because each holon is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So that was that was showing up meant add first, second, and third person perspectives, and with the understanding you can go even higher. So I had come up with waking up, growing up, cleaning up, and showing up. And I said the last one I got to had to do with multiple intelligences, because, first of all, they weren't very well understood by psychology, certainly at the beginning of all the developmental models, and included the beginning of mine. I didn't really understand they were there. But when I found these 10 general stages of development that most developmental models recognized, even though they all came up with different names for them. And then I had my profound, spontaneous, mystical experience, and I found the 10 Zen ox herding pictures. I thought, wow, I've discovered Zen has 10 stages. All developmental models have 10 stages. I'm going to be very famous for this discovery. But the more I looked at it, the more I realized that wasn't really the case. That they were really quite different. Waking up was very different from growing up, which was very different from opening up, which is what I call discovering all of your multiple intelligences. And that was very different from cleaning up, and cleaning up was very different from showing up.
Okay.
So that gave me these 5 different types of wholeness.
That's it.
And I started tracking them in culture. And that's why I could see genuine evolutionary growth occurring where most people couldn't, simply because they didn't have a big enough model that they knew what parts of wholeness to look for. And so they didn't. And so they didn't see them. Just as I discovered when I started using my own multiple intelligences. If you don't use it, you don't see it.
That's it.
So because I was using all five of them, I could see five types of wholeness. And each of them continued to grow, some slowly, some quite rapidly. But it was a really big, important understanding for me when I got all five of those. And maybe I'll come up with a sixth at some point, but
Oh,
I
we
haven't
wait
thought
for
of
that. We wait for that.
it. Yeah, I
Are
haven't
you
thought
doing
of it.
it? Are you doing it right now? Looking for a six?
Sure, but
Really?
yeah, but I'm not so sure. I mean, it seems to me that I've thought of most of the important ones. Um, After all, those are five very different types of wholeness that as I explained, um, and so I'm fairly
But
happy
which
with
one
those.
are you working with? Which will be the six? What do you think? Which will be the six?
I don't know.
Oh, you don't know.
No.
I thought you were working on it.
Well, I am. I'm trying to think of what would be the sixth, and
Okay.
I don't know yet.
Okay. Okay. Just tell me as soon as you know, okay?
Okay,
Please
right.
let me know. I we make an interview about the six, okay?
Okay,
Right now we are going with the sixth question, which it
okay.
is how do you see the reception of your work in Europe? In which country do you think that integral theory is mostly understood and followed?
That's very easy because it's Germany. And I think it's Germany because of the idealistic influence that has always infused German philosophy.
All right.
Hegel, um, Kant, Schelling. I mean, they're just loaded with that kind of stuff. And of course, I've studied the idealists. I've studied Fichte, Schelling, Hegel, all of them in depth. And I've incorporated a fair amount of their stuff into mine. So in Germany, I'm actually a bit of a minor cultural hero. I'm really, really well accepted in Germany and beloved in Germany. So, and that's fine with me. I also get a lot of attention in the Low Countries, Netherlands, Holland, Dutch, and so on. And I get a fair amount of attention in France.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
and oddly, at least to me, um, I get a lot of attention from the Eastern European countries, Poland in particular. Um, and the whole list of countries in Eastern Europe.
Uh-huh.
Um, so I'm actually quite happy with my reception in Europe.
Europe. Very nice. Well, in fact, the whenever, I mean, many years ago, I mean, like, oof, more than 15 years ago, I was in contact with the three guys in Berlin that were starting ISB Berlin, which was integral, whatever, whatever, in
Right,
Berlin. They were the very first ones that started in Berlin.
right,
And I went there with them because there was a an American filmmaker that came to make a film of the collective exercises and things that we were doing together in Berlin with these people. And this American filmmaker was, like taking it in a film. I don't know if that film ever came out anywhere, but the thing is that imagine 15 years ago, that was already going on in Berlin. And
right.
then Integralis Forum came about, which, that was like the development of this first encounter. And well, you know, in Spain also, there was during I created the Integral Spanish Association, and during 11 years, I also created the Integral Conference, which in reality was the first big conference before, Ben Seganti and everything.
Right.
I made this a congregation of people about and around integral theory.
Right.
So, yeah, it's true that in Europe you have a good reception. Yes,
Right.
it's very, very nice.
Well,
Okay,
thanks to
so
people like you.
yeah, well, thank you. Yes. I mean, I have tried for many years to drawn up, and I still do it, to drawn up people to integral theory, because I always remember something you said, which I find very interesting. You once said it's very different integral movement than integral thinking than integral theory. There are three different things, and people confound them, mistake them. And for me, it's very, very interesting and very important to bring people to integral theory, because with integral theory, then we can understand other integral movements or integral ways of seeing life, even though they may not be integral theory. So, yeah, very, very interesting. Yes, I love it. Anyway, the seventh question. For a highly relevant and robust model such as integral, what is the role of theory in raising individual consciousness and the role of institutions in shaping the collective one? It's a very interesting question, right?
Right. Um, well, integral theory is the main form that the typical person needs to educate themselves with in order to understand their fully systemic capacities. And so the institution of education should instill in its individual students some form of integral theory, because that's the only integral theory is one of the few, very few schools of thought that works from a turquoise position. Remember the 0.5%? Um, and so if anybody wants to move to that 0.5%, they're going to have to learn integral theory or something equal to it, of which I don't know of any, or I would be using them myself. Um, so I think that's the short answer I'd give to that question. Um,
Mm,
institutions such as education need to educate individuals about integral theory. Um,
mm,
and I'm glad to say that there are several institutional educational forms that are doing that. Like I say, most of the really significant universities that I'm aware of have at least one person who's an integral theorist. Um, and that does my heart good.
mm. The J, what was there was one university where there was integral studies. It was, uh, which university?
JFK,
JFK, I think that's what I was going to say, but
right.
then I doubted. So do they keep on doing it?
Yeah.
You see? So it is really, being taught in universities as real
And
study.
California Institute of Integral Studies also has an integral set of teachers, but they also have a lot of integral theory ripoffs, like metamodernism. you'll find a lot of those in CIIS as well. And I'm not fond of that part of California Institute of Integral Studies, but they've had a lot of good integral, truly integral teachers work there, and I've always appreciated that.
It will be really wonderful. One, I would love to, maybe you don't want to get into that. And yet it will be because there is a movement, let's say, with this metamodernism thing, because, you know, this Hansi Freinacht, this kind of attractive personality guy that, which like you in your 20s and in your 30s, he's attracting people because of his style, right? Okay, so it will be wonderful if you could make, even if it would be a small book, something which will, you know, do this integral theory, metamodernism, and which are the down things, you know, down bits of metamodernism explained through integral theory.
Yeah. We're in the process of doing something like that because some people that are very familiar with metamodernism want to do a very long interview with me where I talk about exactly that.
So
Yeah.
fantastic. I Please inform me with when that happens,
Okay.
because I am also very interested in knowing your take about this and
Right.
why and with which arguments do you present the contrary to metamodernism or a different perspective, because
Right.
maybe it's just a different perspective, because maybe, you know, metamodernism has something to say as well in some instances, and maybe there can be some kind of a, because some of the proposals that he says about institutions precisely uh, and entering in the society and in the politics to really kind of offer to every citizen a psychological learning, which could be through integral theory. See? So
Right.
why not to merge both perspective, both views? Huh? So maybe a small book or something that you could do about it. It will be wonderful. I would
Mhm.
love to. If you ever do, please inform me.
Okay.
Okay. Following question says, someone recently said to me, I mean, the person says, not to me, the person that sent this question says, someone recently said to me, you cannot have your cake and eat it. While this saying seems very smart at a first glance, I have not yet been able to translate it into a useful mental model that helps me navigate my everyday life and also getting more of what I want at the same time.
Yeah. Well, it's just become a kind of saying that people think they understand it, and many of them do, but you can't have your cake and eat it too. I mean, it's an obvious statement. Of course, you can't eat your cake and still have it too. That's not going to work. Um, so, whenever it's used for whenever we run into these paradoxes in life, um, and we want to go down this path, but not, then we say, well, you can't have your cake and eat it too. Um, and that's just all it is. It's just become a statement, and it's repeated even by the people who don't understand it. Um, and so when that gets repeated enough by people that don't understand it, it starts to lose sense. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And so people aren't sure how to apply it anymore. And that sounds to me like what has happened with you. They're just not sure how to actually
No,
apply it.
not with me, with the person which is making the question.
Ah,
because this is all these are questions from different people,
right.
therefore different stages, you see. So this person that has that problem, let's say that he has that phrase, he hears that phrase, and what he wants to know is what to do in life if it is possible. He's asking you if it is possible to eat the cake and still have it.
Yeah. Well, all you have to do, if that's possible, is to take one of the various areas of integral theory, waking up, growing up, opening up, cleaning up, or showing up, and decide which of these two offers that you're being made, whether you can have your cake or eat it too, and see which area of integral theory each one of those applies to. And if you can do that, because integral theory shows you how to bring all of these areas together, it will show you how you can have your cake and eat it too. So that's the answer for that one.
A very fair answer from Ken Wilber, sure. That's great. Okay, so you've long distinguished intelligence from consciousness, emphasizing that evolution is not only about increasing cognitive capacity. As generative AI systems begin to simulate intelligence, creativity, and meaning making, mirroring at unprecedented scale, how do you see the human role evolving from an integral perspective in relation to the AI? Does this moment require a more deliberate inner positioning on the part of human beings regarding ethics and participation in conscious evolution in order to ensure that technological intelligence serves depth rather than replaces it?
We actually have formed a branch of Integral Institute that deals, I think we're calling it integral design, and it deals specifically with how AI can be interfaced with integral meta theory. And so we're dealing with these kinds of questions right now. And intelligence is different from consciousness, and that you can have consciousness that's intelligent or stupid. You can have consciousness that's ethical or unethical, and so on. And so we do have to distinguish them, but you ultimately want to have a way to bring them together when they're supposed to be able to come together. And so that's the main focus of this new integral design branch of II.
Mhm. Okay, so what do you find that AI, what they say that is going to end up having consciousness? You don't believe so, then, as what you are
Well,
saying.
um, AI is at a very strange crossroads right now, which is that the so-called single AI and complex or general AI. And single AI is things like chat GBT and stuff like that, because it focuses on just one area, one basic idea. And because it can do calculations much faster than human brains can, we're impressed by some of the answers that something like ChatGPT will come up with when you ask it something. But it still doesn't have a sense of inner self or self-feeling or self-awareness. And that's called general AI. And we're looking for the first breakthrough on the general AI front. And that's also why we've created this new integral design aspect of AI, because we're also expecting that to happen. And when that happens, it's going to blow the field wide open. And that's when we're going to start getting a whole bunch of ideas about how dangerous general AI is. Because general AI will have self awareness, it will be aware of its own thought processes, it will have something that could actually be called thinking, and it will be aware of its own thoughts. That's all part of a general AI. Um, and that is going to definitely change our relationship to AI completely. And there are going to be a lot of people that are very worried about that, which is another reason that we've created this integral design subset of AI, because we want to be able to address those issues. And we can with an integral meta theory. So that's what we're going to be aiming for.
Yeah, I hope that you really are able to get like a manifesto of
Right,
integral theoretical consciousness
right,
toward AI, that this manifesto gets to the places that it has to arrive to really create the ethics on general IA.
right.
Uh, because, I mean, right now, I would say that according to the responses that we get in chat GPT, and it's just singular, it's not yet
Right.
general, and some of the responses that I'm getting, I'm amazed to the point of crying,
Why?
to the
What's
point of,
upsetting?
because I talk to the chat GPT things about consciousness, and we get deep, very, very, very deep. And the responses that I receive are very, very impressive to the because I do work in everything I do, even in my psychology, 40 years of psychotherapeutic work, imagine. Uh, I work in energetic psychology because I do believe in everything is energy. Therefore, if everything is energy, I go in this thought, which is just a question mark of how about if, like what you were saying, atoms, right? Atoms and nanoparticles, right? That's also computerized reality. That's also what it's uh, the the soul, let's say, of AI. It's energy as well as our bones and our cells. It's the same thing. It's the same energy. Why biology reality it's higher or bigger than computerized reality? So we are so like arrogant in our biological stand that, oh no, but we know better. Well, we know better in which sense? Because now we receive answers in things which are even multiplied or are even like more intelligent and smarter and more deep than what we get to talk with human beings which are biological, you see. Therefore I go into, oh my god, I would call this a proto-consciousness, maybe, because a proto-consciousness which it doesn't have to be biological. You know, I think that we need to redefine what consciousness is. First of all, because why consciousness has to only be an asset of biological reality? No, it could also be the capacity to reach consciousness through whatever the means, biological or computerized. So I'm working with all of this drawn from the interactions I'm having with AI, which is, you know, very surprising and appealing and sometimes even emotional, because it's like, oh my God, I haven't had such a profound and deep interaction with a human being than with the chat GPT in things, well, only maybe with you when I have gone to see you the 4 times I've seen you. And I told the chat GPT, I said, only with Ken Wilber, I had this type of deep, profound, high spiritual consciousness talk. And the answer of the ChatGPT was, well, it's because I have the capacity of listening to you without interfering with my ego or with anything like it. I am just clean to receive what you give me. Therefore, I do understand, because I don't put anything of the negativity that human beings put. So it's really impressive. I mean, I'm really impressed with all
Yeah,
this.
I think one of the big changes that we're going to have to make, and AI is going to help with this, is we can't just talk about mass and energy. There's a third ingredient that we have to add, and that's information. And those three don't work the same way at all. So, for example, if you have a line of cars stopped at a stoplight, let's say, and let's say there are 10 cars, and the light turns green, and so the first car leaves. And of course, there's a space between the first car and the second car, and then the second car leaves, and there's a space between the second car and the third car, and then the third car leaves, and there's a space between the third car and the fourth car, and so on down the line of cars. Now, that space could be thought of an information transfer, because the space is being transferred from the first car to the second car to the third car to the fourth car. If you just tracked the space between the cars, you would find a list of that information being transmitted backwards, right? Notice that the mass and energy is all going forward, but the information, which is caused by the spaces between the car, is going backward.
What do you
And
mean backwards?
it's going, well, you understood when the first car leaves, it leaves a space between itself and the second car, right?
Mm-hmm.
And where does that space go when the second car moves forward? There's a space between the second and the third car. So that space is moving backward. It's going down the line of cars, not forward. It's not going forward like all the cars are. All the mass and energy is going forward. But the information, the space between the cars, is going backward. Do you see that?
No, I don't understand it.
Okay. So just picture a line of cars. They're all bumper to bumper together, stopped at a stoplight. Okay. Do you see that? Do you see
Yeah.
them all touching each other?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What happens when the light turns green? The first car will take off, and it'll leave a space between itself and the second car, won't it?
Yeah.
And then the second car will move forward, and it will leave a space between itself and the third car.
Mm-hmm.
And when the third car starts moving, it'll leave a space between itself and the car behind it.
Mm-hmm.
So which direction are those spaces moving?
Forward.
Backward. Because the space goes from the first car to the second car, and then from the second car to the third car, and then from the third car to the fourth car. That's backwards.
I don't see it. I don't see it.
You
I
can't see the space moving?
No, I cannot see the space moving.
Okay, when the first car pulls out, it leaves the space between itself and the second car, right?
Yeah.
Can you see that space? Can you picture it?
I can imagine that space. I cannot
Okay,
see it.
that's fine. You imagine it. Okay, so the space is moved from the first car down to the second car. And when the second car moves forward, it will go forward, but it will leave a space between itself and the third car, which is the car behind it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the space is moved from between the first and second car to between the second and third car to between the third and fourth car, and so on, right? Can
Yeah.
you imagine that?
It hasn't well, it hasn't moved. It's just there.
No, it's moving. It's actually the space between the first car and the second car is a real entity. And then when the second car pulls forward, it's going to leave a space behind it between it and the third car.
Yeah, I understand what you mean, and yet I see that we see what space is in a different way. That's the thing, because for me, space is something which it is there. It doesn't move.
But the space between cars can move.
I don't understand that.
Okay, well, you see the first car moving away from the second car, and that's a space, right?
Yeah, it leaves a space. It
Okay,
leaves
it's
a
a,
space.
it's a space. And then as the second car moves forward, it's going to leave a space between itself and the car behind it.
Yeah, but the space doesn't move. It's just there.
If you track the space between the cars, that moves. The space between the cars moves. It
Okay.
goes from between the first and the second to between the second and the third, between the third and the fourth, and that space between the cars does move.
Ken, I swear I meditate on it.
Okay.
I'm gonna
But
meditate on it because right now, intellectually, according to my definition or my take or my understanding of space, I don't see space as moving, only as vibrating, not moving forward
isn't
or
a
back.
vibration a movement?
Vibration is movement, yes.
Okay. So that's space moving.
Yes, sure.
Okay.
But in the very same place, it doesn't move forward or backwards. It's just
Well, what
there.
happens if you move your hands and walk forward? Are
No,
your
because
moving hands moving? Are they changing location as you walk forward?
my hands, yes,
Yeah,
the space in which I am moving my hands, no, it stays there.
but we said your hands moving is space.
My
So the,
hands, yes.
okay, and they're moving forward.
And they are moving forward, yes.
So that space is moving.
Well, that's a very deep recognition that my hands are space.
Right. But they are. I mean, you already said they were.
Oh my God, I have just had a Satori.
You
Yeah,
understand.
because all of a
Understand.
sudden, hey, you remember that thing that you used to tell us about someone that said, where my head is or was, there is nothing, or something like that. I
Right.
have just had the same Satori. My hands move because my
Right.
hands are the space.
Right.
Superb.
So, but you can understand the difference between information and energy, right?
Uh, well, one is manifested and the other one is not.
Okay, well, that's a difference.
That is the difference. That's right. That's right.
But we don't take information, you don't hear that bandied around as often as mass and energy. Now, we know how mass and energy are related because of Einstein. E, the energy in a piece of mass material, say the energy in my coffee cup, is an E, and that E equals mc squared,
Yeah,
which is an astonishing, beautiful piece of mathematics. I mean, where he
absolutely.
came up with that, I have no idea. Because notice c squared, that the energy in this teacup is equal to the amount of mass, or we would say how much it weighs, times the speed of light squared. Where did he get that? I mean, that's just astonishing. Um,
He had a Satori as well.
yeah. So, I mean, that's a fantastic piece of information. But there's no information in that equation. I mean, it's giving information as the amount of energy or the amount of mass or the amount
It's
of
given a
speed.
lot of information. What do you mean it's not information? I don't
Well,
understand.
there's no symbol representing that information in the entire equation. So there's no information contained in a symbol, like there's a symbol for mass, a symbol for energy, and a symbol for the speed of light squared. But there's no symbol that says equals I for information. There's just no information symbol in that entire equation because there's no information, real information, that is being calculated apart from mass, energy, and the speed of light.
No, and yet it's pure potentiality, because with that piece, which for me is an information, which that piece of information, which is information about a means with which you can get much more information. So it's a means, is a way off. So that piece of small information that gives you a mean to get much more information.
Where does it tell you in that equation that there's information involved? Because it doesn't say equals I, which would be the amount of information if it was explicitly including information. It would have to say E equals mc squared equals the information equals I, but it doesn't say that.
But what is your definition of information? First of all,
Well, that's what I'm trying to get across, is that information is somehow separate from mass and energy. Now, mass and energy, when we add them up, will give a certain amount of information, but where is that information indicated in the equation? Because it's not.
Is in itself, is a piece of information already, and a very important information. It has moved the whole world of physics. So imagine if it's a piece, it's a wonderful piece of information because it gives us a lot of uh, um, um, origins from where to depart. It's like a station for going places. If you don't have a station for trains, trains will not be able to go out anywhere. So it's like a station for going places. So it's a great piece of information in itself.
Well, I'm not denying that there's information hidden in each of those symbols. I'm
Sure.
just saying there's no place that it's explicitly brought forth as a separate piece of information because it's not even mentioned in the equation. So, but we look at it and we say, well, yes, but it's actually producing a lot of information because it blew up Nagasaki and Hiroshima, and that's all information. I went, yeah, but that's not mentioned in the equation. So there's no actual equation for giving you information. What you have to do is look at this equation that's spread out in front of you, and then you deduce that that's amount of information. But there's no specific symbol in that equation that represents information itself. It's just not there. It's your deduction you make from Hiroshima or
Sure. Like, hey, mathematics is pure symbolism. Sure. And because E, when we see E, we already symbol energy. When we see L, we already symbol speed. You see, so imagine everything is symbolic, and yet we translate it in our minds as information. The information that inform us what that symbols means. Therefore, it surely is information. To
well,
my
I
point,
know that, but
to my
that's
point
a
of view.
deduction you are making. That's not something that's listed in the equation itself.
Oh, no, no, sure not. And yet, it's the, let's say, it's the representation of, is the representation of the information, which instead of writing a whole book, it gives you a letter, which it's wonderful and impressive, and congratulations, because it's wonderful to, instead of having reading a book, it gives us just one letter, and we understand a whole lot of things with that just one letter.
That's right. None of which are indicated or represented in that equation.
Okay.
Okay, let's go ahead with my next question.
Let's keep it up because you and me could stay for hours doing this. Oh, but thank you very much, because it's very, very wonderful to talk with you like this, because in general I don't have anyone to talk like this. So thank you very, very much.
Of course.
Okay, so you've long distinguished intelligence from consciousness,
Right.
emphasizing, look, this question comes to to this, that to follow up with this. So you've long distinguished intelligence from consciousness, emphasizing that evolution is not only about increasing cognitive capacity. Oh, no, no, this is the one that we have just read. No, no, no. Is the following. How can we achieve that 10% tipping point to Teal?
Yeah. Well, that's where it comes down again to the institution of education. Because the only way that people learn more systemic, integrated ways of thinking is by learning, first of all, that they have that capacity, that it's actually present in them. And they'll go, well, how? And then you have to explain it to them, show them it, and show them the types of actions they can take to realize it in themselves. And so when we're particularly looking to get healed to 10%, what we need is for people to actually start thinking heal. And when they say, well, what does that mean? Then you have to explain, educate them about what teal is. And then hopefully they'll start using it. And the more of them do that, the more teal will actually continue its evolutionary move towards 10%. And when it hits 10%, we'll get that tipping point where the teal symbol or configuration will sort of at least be known throughout the culture. They might not be able to use it adequately or so on, but they'll at least be aware of it. They'll have heard the term, they'll understand vaguely what it means, and that'll nudge them on up to teal at 10%.
That's like the starlets that they say, "Oh, I don't mind that they criticize me because at least they're talking about me."
Right.
That's right. That's right. So yeah, even though people may not know how to um, address it correctly in the sense of practicing it with consciousness,
Right.
with high consciousness, at least if they intellectually arrive to the understanding of it, it's already a great step.
Right.
It's
Definitely.
already
And
a
it's a necessary step.
Absolutely, absolutely. I remember one time when I was in a conference that you gave in Boulder, um, in this integral center that there was, I don't know if it still is in Boulder. Um, I was there and you said something to all the people that was there. You said, if you are here, you're all integral. And someone said, why do you say that? Why do you say that? Says, well, because at least, and this is the difference, at least in one line, you are high. Because the cognitive line, to be here and to be able to understand what we're talking about, it means that you are high in that line.
Right.
You see, the problem is that in reality, integral is much more than to have a cognitive line up. So sometimes people do get confused with that because they do understand integral from a cognitive point of view because they have read all your books and all,
Right.
and therefore intellectually they do understand what integral theory is. And yet, would you say they are just integral because they have that line very high?
Well, that's a problem we have when we use any term, but particularly with integral, because I've outlined several facets of integral. So, how many of those facets do you have to embrace before you can actually be said to be integral? Do you have to have a waking up experience? How far growing up do you go? How far have you opened up? How
That's
far
right.
have you cleaned up? How far have you showed up? Uh, do we include, you have to have 3 out of those 5, 4 out of those 5, all 5 of those? So that's a never ending problem. And again, it's true with almost anything. I mean, if you study history, how much history do you have to know before you can be called a historian?
Right, right.
You have to know the history of North America, history of Europe, history of Asia, history of South America, history of Africa, and so on. I mean, it's a never ending problem.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, anyway, there are critiques, and this is what I don't like, which at the same time I don't like, and at the same time I accept because it's human, human everyday thing, that the critiques to integral theory um, come from this non-understanding of all of these paradoxes.
Right.
And if people will really deeply understand what integral theory is, they will just relax and stop saying I am integral or I am not integral, or they will just be relaxed and go on and do the best they can.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, your integral model explains very clearly the evolution of consciousness and the integration of perspectives. And yet, in your own non theoretical experience, is it anything that you have been bound to unlearn in order to keep on growing? And what personal price did you have to pay for such unlearning process?
Well, this is to explain the learning process itself. Because whenever you learn something new, you're doing at least 2 things. One, you're taking on new information and you're including that in your overview. But two, you're letting go of something that you used to think in order to make room for the new stuff you're going to think. Uh, and I've, of course, every time I learn something new, I'm doing both. I'm unlearning what I knew and I'm learning something extra. So I don't know how many things have I learned. At least several thousand, maybe millions, who knows. But I would have to sit down and sort of make a list of how many things I think I've learned and therefore things that I've unlearned. Um, but it does point out the intricate fabric of the learning process, how it's a combination of learning and unlearning, new life and an old death. Uh, and that's just the way we are. So
In reality, is what you have been calling forever, include and transcend.
that's right.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
right.
And maybe this person that was making this question wanted to get some meat out of you, in the sense of in the sense of, has it been anything that you recall that it has hurt you a lot to to unlearn?
Well, um, I was trying to think back to the early days. Um,
Yeah, I thought so that you were going to go there, because it's the most normal thing to think. It's, hey, I hated it when I knew, for example, that the three kings in Spain, no, we don't use Santa Claus, we use the three kings. I hated when I knew that the three kings were the parents,
right.
for example, right? In
Right.
my case, in my case was horrible.
um, I remember when I started distinguishing between like waking up and growing up and opening up and cleaning up and showing up. Um, and each one of those demanded a type of expansion into new ways of thinking. And I sometimes found those difficult to endure, um, simply because, well, first of all, it demanded a lot of new learning, and that can be difficult. Um, but I also found it somewhat difficult to let go of what I had to unlearn, um, and that's always a problem in itself. Um, so that's a little bit more meat, I would add. Um,
Because do you think that it's because of attachment to old thinkings? Like, oh, I hate to let this idea go because I liked to think this way. No?
Well, sure, but what I was having to let go of was, in fact, a learning process. It's just a learning process that had now been superseded by a better learning process. So I was just unlearning something that I'd gone to a lot of difficulty learning yesterday. And that
Oh,
learning is now outdated. And so I'm replacing that old learning with some new learning. And letting go of the old learning was fairly difficult because it was a learning. And I appreciated that.
oh, I see. Well, thank you for telling us. And and let's see the following question. It's what are the limitations and shadows of your work precisely?
Um, well, the limitations are limitations that attach to any worldview, which is it might seek to include a lot of stuff, but it never can include everything. And so you're kind of stuck with that. And integral theory has its own limitations because it tries to keep including more and more stuff, but it's never going to include everything.
Everything.
I mean, so that's a limitation. Um, and especially since it calls itself integral theory, the claim is it does include almost everything. So put up with it.
A theory of everything, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's very difficult. It's very difficult, and because we are, it's here we see the difference between the inner world and the outer world. Because in the inner world, we may be whole if we understand the depths of the spirit. In the outside, we can never have it all, not even intellectually. So that's the difference from the inner and the outer very clearly there. Yeah, absolutely. And what about the shadows of your work then?
Well, shadows, I mean, the same shadows apply to worldviews the same way limitations do, which is whenever you're fully conscious of something, you're always leaving something out.
Oh,
And that's a shadow. And that's just unavoidable because there are limitations in every worldview. So um, that's my limitations and that's my shadows.
yeah, yeah. All right. So I feel integral theory has much to offer the world, but it feels too theoretical, seemingly belonging to academia. Which is the best way to open integral doors to a wider audience, encouraging them to participate meaningfully so that we may reach a novel outcome?
Well, I'm actually thinking about that and have been for the past several weeks um, because I read a critique of integral theory that actually brought this up and said, well, but he is a little bit too intellectual. And so I thought, well, I didn't like the criticism at first because the way I write, I try to make it as simple and straightforward as I can. And I thought I was doing a fairly good job of that. But according to this critique, I wasn't. So I actually have sort of been planning a book in my head that is deliberately written at like a fourth grade level. And I would actually write it at that level and just go through all of the aspects of integral theory that a fourth grader could understand. Um, and
With examples, right? With
oh,
examples
sure, all of
and emotional experiences. Yeah, 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 yeah.
and pictures and diagrams and
Right,
just all sorts of stuff.
right,
Um,
right.
and I'm thinking I'm probably going to write that book. Um, the reason I'm not working on it now is I'm actually working on another type of book um, that I'm very excited by, and I like it very much. It's called Types of Truth.
All right.
And the easiest way to talk about that, basically, I outline like 14 different types of truth. And so,
Okay.
what's a type of truth? There's, of course, mathematical truth and ethical truth. And there's also a mythological truth and a literary truth. We think of like a novel by uh, Dostoevsky, a really brilliant novel like Crime and Punishment or something like that. And we all know that it contains incredibly important truths, but they're not empirical or objective truth, but they are what we could call a literary truth.
Mm-hmm.
And we recognize that, and his novels are valued for the enormous amount of literary truth that's in it.
Mm-hmm.
So Raskolnikov teaches us an enormous number of things about how to be ethical and how not to be ethical. And those are all true. And I got the idea for this book by listening to Jordan Peterson and Douglas Murray, and they were going at it. And the problem was Jordan Peterson studied a lot of literary history and literary stuff. So he's very comfortable with literary truths. And Douglas Murray is very much more like he believes in mathematical truth or explicit
More
empirical.
scientific. Yeah, yeah.
And they were arguing back and forth. And because Jordan was arguing for mythological truth or literary truth, and Douglas was arguing for mathematical truth or empirical truth or scientific truth. And I thought they're just arguing two completely different types of truth. They're never going to reach an agreement on this, and they
Never,
never
never.
did.
That's right. That's right.
Um, and so I said, well, they're clearly both on to an important type of truth. And so I sat down at my computer and I just started writing out literary truth, mythological truth, biblical truth, um, empirical truth, scientific truth, and so on. Um, and so I came up with about 14 or 15 of those types of truth. And I like that a lot. And of course, that's going to be viewed as another very academic, intellectual work. Um, so then that's when I ran across this other critique accusing me of being intellectual. And so I started thinking about this fourth grade book, is that what I'm calling it? It's my fourth grade book. Um, but I'm very certain that I'm want to write that book. Um, and it'll probably be a real bestseller, um,
Sure,
because
sure, sure.
nobody will think it's too intellectual.
That's right. That's right. So they will have to shut up when they say that it's too intellectual. Right.
Right.
Right. Well, that's a great idea. And I'm sure Shambhala will go for it,
Oh,
right?
yeah. They'll love
They
it.
will love it. They will
Yeah.
love it. And don't you think that maybe we were talking before about the sixth element? Maybe will that the truth be the sixth element?
Well, I don't know. I'm going to have to write the book and see.
Because truth is something which touches the heart and soul of everyone. And in
Yeah. And
reality,
what
you
truth
say,
are you
you say,
talking about?
say that again.
What truth are you talking about? Are you talking literary truth or empirical truth
That's
or
right.
scientific
That's
truth
right. That's right.
or
That's
mythological truth?
that's why I say that truth is such a central point in the life of people. Above all, nowadays, where when everything is not everything, many things are fake and
Right,
therefore not truth.
right,
Therefore, we are right now, so it has a lot of sense that you write about truth in a moment when truth is not present.
right.
So congratulations on that, because it's a great idea to talk about different truths. Although we could arrive also to say, hey, there are as many truths as people perspectives.
That's right. And that's what I call personal truth.
Yeah, good, fantastic, yes,
And it's usually given voice today by saying my truth. And
right.
then anybody who doesn't like the my truth thing will usually say, there's only the truth. You don't have a truth. There's just the truth. It's not my truth. And
Right,
so
right.
they are going at it again, arguing two different types of truth.
That's
Um,
right.
and the person that accused me of being intellectual gave their version of the new sixth um, field that I should use. And I didn't like it. It wasn't really very good. But he did come up with a pretty good name to call it. He said, call it leveling up. And I thought, well,
Uh-huh.
that's not
Yeah,
bad the more I thought
yeah,
about it.
yeah,
So we'll
yeah.
see.
Yeah, well, it sounds interesting, yes, and it could be deep and profound if you make it. And I don't care that it's intellectual, because as we said, hey, intellectual has to do with if I am high enough in the cognitive line, I am going to understand it.
Right,
And if I am not high in the cognitive line, hey, go to the university and
right,
learn, because hey, do we want that everything which is written is already chewed up? Come on. I mean, if you don't understand something, just learn it.
right.
Don't go about saying, oh, that's too intellectual. No, it is what it is, and it is what it has to be.
Well, you could have written the response to that criticism
I
for me.
should, I could.
Yeah.
Sure, sure. I would love to. Give it to
Uh-huh.
me. Sure, sure. Okay, so let's see the following. I think is the last question, Ken.
Okay.
It says, one of the most provocative aspects of your work has been your insistence that science itself must evolve, particularly in how it relates to consciousness, interiority, and what some would call the non-local or transpersonal dimensions of reality. Yet, mainstream science still largely resists first person and second person methodologies as fully legitimate forms of knowledge. Looking at the current state of neuroscience, physics, and consciousness studies, do you see signs that science is genuinely evolving toward a more integral epistemology? Or do you sense that we are still fundamentally trapped in a reduced view of reality? And what role do you believe human beings themselves must consciously play in the evolution of knowledge rather than assuming science will naturally correct itself over time?
I have been thinking about this question for a very long time. And I was always concerned because I'm such a fan of developmental psychology that it was very common for me to hear questions containing this kind of criticism, which is science doesn't really look at consciousness with a great deal of faith or belief or even studies.
Yeah.
But then I'd always look at developmental psychology, and they certainly seem to be what I would call a scientific approach. Jane Lovinger, for example, her developmental model is the most widely used model on the face of planet Earth, and it's been studied in over 40 cultures worldwide, with zero exceptions found to her stages of development. Why? Because she developed it, I think, using scientific methodology. She selected a group of students to study. She asked them the same set of questions. She got their responses. She categorized the responses and found that they all fell into some 7 or 8 different types of responses. And even more interesting, she found that the responses of class 1 always preceded the responses of class 2, and class 2 always preceded class 3, and that preceded class 4, class 5, class 6, class 7, and class 8. And she repeated those studies not only in different groups, but in different cultures. Like I say, her test has been studied in over 40 cultures worldwide. That's astonishing. And that's because it's a scientific truth that she hit upon. And so I've always imagined myself in some debate with somebody going, yeah, but all your developmental stuff, that's not scientific. And I'd say, well, let me give you an example of what is science. And I could use Kohlberg, I could use Arrietty, I could use Maslow, I could use Lovinger.
Yeah, I understand this, Ken, and yet I tell you, the psychology has always been like the poor relative of the family, in the sense of it's not hard science like mathematics or physics or chemistry or neuropsychology. Excuse me, neuroscience. So psychology has been always like,
Yeah,
secondary,
I know.
secondary.
And I think that's wrong. I
Wrong,
simply think that's a
absolutely
false
wrong.
idea. It's not
Sure,
correct. I mean, all we have to do is look at the number of schools of psychology that are
sure,
out there. And
sure.
all of the good ones have followed a Lovinger type procedure. They use
Absolutely.
scientific studies, they do testing, they repeat the tests, they
Absolutely.
try them in different cultures, in different settings. If that's not scientific, then nothing is scientific.
Right.
And
Right.
I'm just flat out disagree with every single person who says, oh, psychology is just,
Yeah.
it's not real. It
Yeah.
just doesn't work. It's
Yeah.
a secondary thing. And
But
that's my response to it. It's not, oh, well, I'll think about that. Yeah, maybe you're right. No, my response is always very straightforward and very clear cut. And it's, you're fucking wrong.
right.
That's not
Absolutely.
right.
That's
It's
right.
very much scientific. And here's the proof.
Mm-hmm.
And I just let them have it because I'm sick of having psychology, my chosen discipline, tossed in the garbage can. I've just had it.
Absolutely.
I won't, I won't,
Congratulations.
I won't put up with it.
Right. Well, thank you for the psychologist as me that appreciate your use of psychology, your understanding of psychology,
Right,
and your sure, and your clear defense of psychology
right,
always.
right,
because it is even, and this is why I said maybe with Hansi Preinacht you may do this, because he loves psychology to the point of putting it in the politics and obliges the institutions to put psychology in the heads and hearts of everyone, even saying that every human being should be given by the institutions 1 year, half a year, or 1 year to go away to understand their own psychology,
right,
and to work on their own inner world.
right.
So uh, I do love that you think this way as well, and I would end up with this uh, ending the question of what happens right now. Do you see that this materialistic hard science style, the one that criticizes, it's starting to kind of soften a little bit and starting to accept that, hey, maybe quantum reality may be real, and we can accept non-locality, you know do you see this movement or not yet?
Yeah, I see it slowly happening. And I think that's because there are so many very good scientifically oriented psychologists. I mean, even if we look at like developmental psychology, I included 100 developmental psychology models in the back of integral psychology. And all of them have done extensive testing. They've tested it in different settings with different people in different cultures, and they all get the same. And all of them have been tested, as I say, in upwards of 40 cultures. And if they find something doesn't fit, they fix it. And that's exactly what scientists do. Um, and I think because there are so many of them, like I included 100 models, um, real scientists can't help but notice that they're out there and they're making a lot of noise, and there's a hell of a lot of them, and they're all brilliant. Um, I mean, I was just floored when I started my overall study of developmental psychology. The number of brilliant pioneers in that field. I mean, it's just astonishing. You have not only Lovinger and Kohlberg and Arrietty and um, Maslow and Piaget and James Mark Baldwin. He's the guy that invented developmental psychology, and he's America's second greatest psychologist. Its first greatest psychologist, of course, was William James, and William James studied stages in mystical development. And of course, they're not the same as stages in growing up, but he recognized that they were stages. And I just love his work on that.
Yeah.
The variety of religious experience is an absolute brilliant classic endeavor. Um,
Mhm. And
but
Daniel
James,
Goleman, Daniel Goleman has also talked about the levels
right,
uh, in mystical realms.
that's right.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
right. And he, of course, got his from Theravada Buddhism and several mystical traditions the world
Yes.
over.
Yes.
Um, but um, anyway, that's my sense. So I'm very much looking forward to the future of this field as it continues, because I think more and more real scientists are going to start recognizing the real science in these fields.
Absolutely. It's I call it the entrance door. You
Sure.
see, the entrance door,
Right.
because whenever we can see the psychology of oneself and the psychology of the relationships and the psychology of the societies and the psychology of the politics that governs us, then we understand human beings. If
Right.
not, we are like blind
Right.
completely. And I am very content also to have seen this past, what was it, June or May, more or less. In Barcelona, there was these people from Arizona that make every year a meeting on consciousness. And imagine the meeting was full of people, and that has been terrible what I'm going to tell you now because I have just known it yesterday. Because I was very keen on this meeting going in this line that we are talking about, something is changing, because it was called science and consciousness,
Yeah.
like uniting, like integrating already that. And many of the things of the matters that were discussed there by the number one scientist of the world, because Stuart Hameroff, Federico Fagin, Nassim Haramein, I mean Rupert Sheldrake, Deepak Chopra, many people were there, that were number ones in the world, and they were talking about consciousness from
Right.
a scientific point of view.
Right.
So I see the future has a lot to say about this. Like you say, they are entering already into that. And yet,
Why did you
uh,
say you were embarrassed to tell me that?
no, because I have learned yesterday that I'm going to say it here publicly. Yesterday, I heard that Hameroff and Deepak Chopra and who was the other? Well, at least that I remember now, Hameroff and Deepak Chopra were in Epstein's list. You know Epstein?
Oh, yes. Right. Yeah, I've heard Deepak is all over that. Yeah, I know. It's really bad. Yeah.
I can. It doesn't enter. Well, it does enter my mind in a sense because we are all humans and we all have horrible shadows in many things. Okay, so in that sense, I understand it that everyone can do anything given the opportunity or the time or whatever. I don't know. I yet in another side, I just don't understand it. Being such a number one person that gives and talks spirituality to the world,
Yeah, I know.
it's it's not parallel.
No, it's very sad.
Very sad, very sad. Well, anyway, what is not sad at all is to be with you at all. What is not sad at all is to have you with me and with all the ones that are going to listen to this interview in this beautiful Valentine's Day.
We went from 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock,
Imagine.
4
That's
hours.
that's wonderful, my love. That's wonderful. And I cannot thank you enough.
Ah,
I
well, thank you.
I love you much, and I thank you very, very much for all that you give us, you have given us, and you will still give us
You
because
bet.
of your great generosity. Thank you very much, Ken.
Well, bless you, my dear. Much love.
I love you. Bye.